Okay, so I've officially, I think, hit the record button. Though I don't see, oh yeah, there it is. Okay, so I hit the record button. So just so you know, it's all, we're gonna be recording. Yeah, so I gave a brief introduction to LEAF, but let's just turn it over to our panelists. We have a really diverse crew here that are representing different sectors in the emerging urban forestry world. We have everyone from ecology to scientists to people on the business end of things to people making furniture to people in the like city planning end of stuff. So we've got 5 folks here, and rather than me give them long introductions, I'm just gonna go forward in the little PowerPoint thing and let them introduce themselves if that sounds good. So let me move on to the next slide, hopefully. And we'll have a couple pre-formulated questions for all the folks that are listening out there, and then we'll have some time for live Q&A as well. But even in the pre-formulated questions, if you have any comments or questions, feel free to put them in the chat and we'll interrupt the speakers as needed. So we're just gonna start off by having everyone introduce themselves, kind of talking about who they are and what they do, a cool project that they're currently working on, and then how they got into the urban forestry world. So I think Dwayne, you're up first if you wanna take it away.
Okay, hi everybody. Yeah, thank you. As you heard a little bit, and as you will continue to learn throughout this presentation, that urban trees provide many benefits and they also provide many jobs. I am the owner of Woodward Urban Forest Products. My company produces lumber and wood products from urban and community trees that have to be cut down. The logs I use to make lumber have come from trees that once grew in parks or from along streets or even from yards. And while living and growing, these trees provide us with many benefits. But when they've reached the end of their life or have to be removed because of damage or health reasons, many of the services they provided and those benefits while they were living can continue on through products that can be made from these urban and community trees. So my company very much so supports a healthy and thriving urban tree canopy, but I also help direct the wood from these removed trees away from waste streams, and we turn them into lumber, which helps feed multiple jobs. I then introduce this very special wood to architects and to builders and manufacturers so that the wood can return right back to the communities where the trees once grew. And this helps benefits the healthy environments inside of buildings and in homes. So I'm involved, as you can see in the photos, from the trees to the logs to working with architects. I'm involved in many industries that the trees provide, but I also could consider myself being in the recycling business. And I think that's something that can resonate with a lot of people today. But as far as a cool project that I worked on not too long ago was the Pfizer Forum in Milwaukee, where the Milwaukee Bucks play. The owners and architects there were very interested in using sustainable products, healthy products, and when they could to provide and build with local products. And they wanted to also have a building that represented their region, their city, their state. And so a lot of wood was used because there's a lot of wood industry, traditional or urban or otherwise, here in Wisconsin. And there are many jobs associated with that. So I was very pleased and proud and proud of the owners and the architects. They specified this urban wood that I'm talking about. And my product is now going to live on and continue to tell a story to those who visit that arena and hopefully inspire them to seek this out. And I got into this when I was in grade school, probably 5th or 6th grade is when the world started talking about the ozone layer. And then soon after, recycling was kind of rejuvenated. So I've always been interested in recycling. And while I followed a traditional corporate path for a good part of my life, I'm now very fortunate to be in a purpose-driven business. So I don't really consider myself a salesperson of my products. I consider myself more of an advocate. And I hope that that's something we can all find and that you can all find in your jobs and your careers. So I hope that you will be very interested in learning more about the urban forestry industry. How's that?
Awesome. That was great. Thanks for kicking us off. That was a perfect introduction into kind of the breadth of the urban forestry and some of the different potentials that it can take. And we'll just go on to our next person, which is Kim.
Hi, my name is Kim Sebastian, and I am an urban forester with the Department of Natural Resources. And you can tell from the variety of the photos that I have up that urban forestry is a very diverse profession. And I'll start off by saying there is no typical day as far as what we do. If you look at the pictures, the first one on the left underneath my name is an Arbor Day celebration in a local community down here. And you can see there's a flag there, and some of you may recognize that flag. That is the Tree City USA program. And that is all about awareness and celebration of trees. Below that picture is a bunch of people standing out in the field, and we're actually at a nursery in this picture, a tree nursery. And so a lot of our focus is on training and making sure that people who take care of trees have all the tools that they need. Also, because we are meeting at a nursery here, a tree nursery, really important that we have a wide variety of trees. And so we work with many industry partners to make sure that our urban forests are green and they are diverse and they're full of people. The third picture that I have is the perfectly formed evergreen tree on the bottom in the middle. Well, it's not really a tree, but it was my take on how much technology is a part of our job. And so that's actually a cell phone tower that is on that, that is tree form. And so if you look close, you can kind of see there's the brown trunk and the leaves, which are plastic, and a way for the community to maintain the character of their community by requiring a tree-looking cell phone tower. One of the cool projects that I have worked with, and I don't know if you can see it as much as the one right above the tree, there is a Brewers racing sausage in a tree that's actually Miller Parkway, and there's a baseball to the right. The Miller Park is in the background, and this was a project that we worked on with the Brewers to get more trees in communities, not only on the streets, but in some of the parks that are local to the county and also on some state trails. So working with a lot of partners. Part of that cool project is it's always a good day in forestry when you get to work with people. The upper right-hand corner is a healing garden. And so this kind of speaks a little bit to the benefit of trees and what trees provide as far as better soil, better air, cleaner water, more wildlife. But this particular photograph is a healing garden. And so there is a hospital in the background. It's actually a cancer center. And what part of urban forestry that we've been focusing on is how important of a role trees play in human health and the healing of people. So it's really great, more of a newer area of research that has shown how great of an impact that trees and nature have on human health. The bottom picture in the lower right-hand corner is a giant buck that lives in my neighborhood and has destroyed a lot of my trees. But it was kind of my path into urban forestry way back when my dad and I took a hunter safety course together. And that was where I started to first really think about nature and how I love trees. But it wasn't until I got to college that I discovered urban forestry and how it was this blend of people and nature, two things that I love a lot, and how healthy people make healthy communities. And a big part of that is nature and the importance of trees.
All right. Thanks so much, Kim. I loved how you touched on things from health to art to ecology to the next generation of little baby trees, and particularly the idea of working with people and how you can incorporate that into nature. Sometimes people think of forestry as a lonely profession out in the woods, but thanks for dispelling the myth.
Sure.
All right, let's go on to our next panelist. Oh, you have a quote. I forgot about your quote.
So I did wake up to this quote, and I really felt strongly about it, about how important of a role that trees play. And so I'd just like to read this quote for all of you out there that are interested in trees, but not really 100% sold on it. But to know something about trees, even about one tree, is to know something profound about nature, the nature of the world, and our place in it, and how trees really do play an important role in our communities and in our own well-being. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you. That was great. All right. Paul, you're up next.
Now I guess I'm unmuted. Okay, so yeah, I'm Paul Morrison, and my area of study right now actually is making things from urban trees. Dwayne mentioned trees that needed to come down. We work everywhere from log to finished product. So while I don't take down urban trees, I work with a network of arborists and several municipalities in the Madison area on trees that need to be removed for whatever reason that might be. And then we take that log all the way to finished products. As far as the finished products, you can just see one log in the display there. And that's a log that I'm standing in the middle of after its removal, after we split it into a couple of slabs. And then the other side of it, you can see a conference table 22 feet long and 7 feet wide, made from that tree. But we make a little bit of everything. So conference tables, dining tables. A lot of the cases we're working on a tree that came from a person's home, obviously loved by that family while it was there. Very difficult time when it had to be removed for them, but then putting it back into the home allows them to kind of keep those memories intact in that tree for many more generations. So a lot of our projects are connecting really personally with like the quote we just heard, that's we know those trees. And with urban trees, they are trees that we literally know. There's stories contained in those trees. You know, even the fact that there's a nail in that tree tells something about the history of it. So these can be great trees where we have great connections, but the reality is at some point they do come down, and being able to capture those stories back in the trees is a big part of what we do as a business. Project wise, like I said, we do a little bit of everything. Species wise, we work with almost in every hardwood that grows in Wisconsin or it grows in an urban environment. So we have a wider array of trees really in our urban environments than we do in our northern woodlands, for example. But we deal with a little bit of everything on species. And what's fun about it is that with the type of work we're doing, we're not ever doing the same thing day after day after day. There's always variety in it. And our scope of work, again, with that log to finished products, we have a couple of guys that are working on a sawmill, picking up logs. We just picked up a couple of logs yesterday from a home, and they'll be going back into that home about a year from now. So we have a sawmill that we're operating, a couple of small band sawmills. We have a couple of drying kilns, so we can dry that wood down to the quality we need to be making furniture. And then we have a complete custom woodworking shop. So today in the shop, we have what will become a 12-foot conference table in maple, coming from about 5 blocks from where the business that's buying that table has their offices. So keeping it really local. Rarely do I travel, or does the wood that we're dealing with travel more than 30, 40 miles from where the tree grew. And like I said, most of that is really those close connections, a lot of times very personal if it's the owner of the trees. As far as the types of people that we employ here, my personal background, I'm a farm boy. Grew up just enjoying the trees around me, took our logs to a local sawmill and made stuff. I've had a passion for woodworking since I was a little kid. I actually got my degree in engineering and worked in an office for a long time just with wood as a hobby. But then with that passion for wood, that's where I ended up going back to is making things and using that technical training in engineering to actually engineer some of the processes, some of the joinery and stuff that we employ regularly. Other people on our staff, one gentleman is a landscape architect by training. So designing in the urban environment was kind of his training, but he actually is enjoying the woodworking side of it. We have a couple of others that have studied in the environmental sciences area. And again, wanted to have that personal connection of actually working with wood. And then a couple of them just, again, went through the whole process, unrelated fields, but were able to connect through the woods or the hobby side that they turned into a profession. So a variety of different things that we're doing with our own wood. We also supply a couple of the Habitat for Humanity restores in our area so that others in our community can be using woods from our community to make their own projects. And so a lot of wood, in fact, we delivered a load last week and already they are looking for another load to be delivered next week. So that's, again, a summary of what we do. I also had authored a book called Tree to Table, kind of talking about this whole urban woodworking concept, kind of a little bit of a history of why it's happening now, as well as what we're talking about when we mention the word urban wood. So that's, again, a summary for me, and I'll pass it on there.
Awesome. Thanks so much. I loved how you connected your passion to your career and thought about keeping memories intact and community connections. And that's one of the coolest pieces of wood and tables that I've ever seen. So good one. And I know we have a couple tech ed classes in here too. So just putting the plug out for that.
Right.
All right. And we've got John up next. Let's see, do we still have John in here?
All right, can you hear me now?
Yep, you're good to go.
Okay, I'm John Kempinen, the city forester for Stoughton, Wisconsin. My job involves a lot of different things, unlike the builders and the woodworkers you've heard from already. I spend my days running a city forestry program, and that entails a lot of different tasks depending upon the day and the time of year. We do everything from tree planting to tree trimming to tree removals. And outside of that, being a public works employee, I'm also required to plow snow and help out with basically any other projects that we have ongoing. So like Paul had just mentioned, there's a lot of different things, and day to day can change quite a bit. So that's part of why I like what I do, is that it's never the same thing 2 days in a row for me. And Kate, I've got a couple of slides here. Could you
Yep.
advance for me here? So in this one, you can see what we've got is actually a wood drying solar kiln on the left. And that was a joint project with a couple of different groups, including the high school, the wood shop there, and the senior center, as well as a local industry partner. So we take some of our own trees here in town and we mill those into lumber and dry it in that kiln there. And we turn those boards into projects all over the city, kind of like the boardwalk that you see there on the right side. And that one actually reminds me of Kim's piece earlier, the photo with the garden by the hospital. That boardwalk is at the end of a trail coming from our local hospital that leads down to the Yahara River. And so we built that boardwalk, and now there's benches on there as well. And that allows patients at the hospital or employees that are able to actually go down to nature on their time off and get a break from being, in the city or in the actual hospital, depending on what they're there for. So that's one of our biggest projects that we've done with Urban Wood. This slide here shows kind of the variety of what I could be doing any given day. On the left, you can see that's not me up in the bucket, but it often is me in that bucket truck doing either trimming or removals. And on the right, there's tree planting happening, and that's something that we do. We plant hundreds of trees every year. So, the variety there, again, one day I could be digging holes, putting new trees in the ground. One day I could be taking a tree down and turning it into lumber. So it really just depends on what we need to do that day and what has to get done. Why did I go into forestry? I think for me, it goes back to childhood, hiking and camping quite a bit with my family. And I continued that when I was an adult and kept doing that with my wife and kids, and went back to college at a certain point when I was tired of doing other things, and I went into forestry. And now I can say that it's been the best choice I've ever made, because I'm never bored here. It's a different challenge every day, and urban forestry for me is a fantastic idea. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much. I love the jack of all trades, master of many.
Well, master of very few.
And also just wanted to acknowledge that it sounds like your pathway wasn't necessarily linear, and that a lot of times pathways in careers aren't always linear, but a common theme seems to be really finding your passions and figuring out ways to do those. So thanks so much. All right, and last but not least, we've got Dr. Richard Hauer from UWSP.
Thank you, Kate. I'm Rich Hauer. I'm a professor of urban forestry at the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point. Now, the title sounds perhaps fancier than it actually is. I get the privilege and opportunity to work with students on a daily basis. It could be working in the classroom to understand perhaps tree risk assessment, as we're doing the picture over here. It could be actually trying to understand trees at the end of their life cycle, as you heard from many great examples here today of taking urban trees and making them into a final product, urban wood. It's used for many purposes. And then in between of all the things that trees actually do for society. Now, one of the things I was asked to talk about are some of the cool projects I get involved with, and actually in particular, is there any one cool project? And I have to say actually all of them. This morning I was actually working with a Chinese researcher on using facial recognition technologies to understand how urban green spaces affect people. And then later tonight, I'll get an opportunity to work with some visual aesthetics of trees outside of Beijing, China. Tomorrow, I get to work on a project that's actually closer to home in Wisconsin. We're working on understanding tree canopy and actually assessment and actually how tree canopy changes over time, and maybe some factors that are really influential in understanding of why we have greater tree canopy in other areas and things we can do as managers. Now, for many of you listening to us today, we were like you at one time. I'm 53 right now, but at one time I was 5, another time I was 3. But I remember what it was like to be a child, maybe a 13-year-old in junior high or a student in high school. I want you to close your eyes for a second. Yes, every one of you. I'm doing it myself. Now think about this for a second. What's your favorite tree? And also, with your favorite tree, who is the person that's part of that picture? Now I'm going to share my favorite tree. You may chuckle a little bit, and my students chuckle when I share one of my favorite trees is box elder. And in my picture there, I see my grandpa, because I remember my grandpa in the box elder tree that he built a tree fort for me. And I'd go up visit my grandparents, and I could always, climb up the box elder tree. And my grandpa would share with me of how he grew up in North Dakota for a period of his life. And box elder is one of the few trees that would tolerate the winds of outside of Jamestown, North Dakota. And so to me, actually, the social connection of trees. Now, another day, it could be a sugar maple tree in my experience with it, or it could be an oak on another day. I pretty much love all trees, but yeah, I know you have a special tree and you have a special person that's part of it. Now, how did all of us actually get to where we are today? We obviously have connections. I think certainly for trees, myself, it was that silly little box elder story, perhaps. But I was an outdoorsy kid. I was not that I didn't have fun indoors, playing video games. Those are cool things that came out when I was a child. I remember playing like Atari 2600. I'm really dating myself. But being outside, I was often really, really comfortable. Just being outside and actually in green spaces. And actually, it doesn't surprise me of the research we know now that green spaces, and I like to refer to it as getting away from your problems, that in about 45 minutes of time, if you have a stressful day, you can just go outside and hang out with nature, and your stress levels greatly reduce. And that's just, a phenomenal thing that we know about urban trees. And you experience it because I'm sure you've just been out in nature and you've had your favorite place, and your mind can just wander about things rather than maybe important things you're learning in the classroom, but your mind is just thinking of connections in nature. Myself also, my story is I was also part of my life was a farm kid. I was also a city kid for part of my life, so I guess I got those couple connections there. But again, with those experiences, seeing things grow, and actually, whether one day it could be a tree, another day for me as an academic, I get to see students grow in their abilities to actually take the knowledge that we transfer to them to be the next set of urban foresters, urban community foresters, people that work with trees. And I could just perhaps end with that. You've heard this story from many of the other panelists today here, that urban and community forestry, working with trees, it's about trees and people. And I often say, trees don't pay me, people do for doing the jobs I do. But the interactions in the phenomenal things I get to do every day, the variety of tasks, it's actually not a boring field. There's something actually for every one of you. If you like nature and you actually want to make a potential career, this is actually one of them you can actually branch into, no pun intended. I'll turn back over to Kate.
All right, thanks so much, Rich. And before we move on to the next question, I just wanted to give people a little bit of time to ask any particular things in the chat, or you can turn on your audio. I did want to make a couple quick announcements. We have probably some classes that are live that might end a little bit before or after our allotted time. So if you need to leave with your class, that's totally okay. Again, we're recording this, so we'll send you the link and you can watch the rest of it later. We have about an hour scheduled. And there's also some PLT curriculum connections and some cool green career quizzes that we're handing out for both students and teachers. It's fun to take, whatever your age. And I'll go through those a little bit at the end, but just so you know, if you have to leave early, we'll email those links to you as well. So with that, we've got a couple other questions that we just wanted to have folks sort of address. It's about 3 o'clock now, and I know at least one class has to leave at 3:15, and I want to leave a little time for Q&A. So if, Dwayne, if you want to take the first stab at this one, and then others can add in too.
Sure.
Yeah, career availability.
Urban forestry includes many things. And when I think of urban forestry, I think about Kim Sebastian and I think about Rich Hauer. And from my perspective, being a lumber supplier who is working to raise awareness of the products of urban forest, that industry is really growing. But it involves many of the same jobs as traditional forestry. And I think that the biggest thing to learn is that, and I loved Rich's example about that tree to picture, and I certainly had a tree that I pictured, but I think when many folks, if you ask them how far away is the forest, they believe and may envision a place that's far away and vast, and trees growing close together and I imagine that's a forest that we may all envision. But that urban forest is, as Kim said, or as I read here in the description, is the forest in our community, is the forest outside our door. And that is a very different vision when we think about an urban forest. And I think all of the same jobs from milling and operating a sawmill and being an arborist, being a maker, a designer of wood products, are also involved in urban forestry. And but urban forestry, and I may be correct, and Kim might correct me, but the thought of considering our city's forest as a forest is not such an old idea in my understanding. And it might be 20 to 30 years old where we're finding the significance and the importance of urban forestry to all of us. And so I really, is it being demanded? Is the idea of capturing and utilizing urban wood growing? Yes, it absolutely is. Are we recycling? Are we considering trees not a waste? Are we considering them a resource? That is growing. And many of the same jobs are involved, but no matter what job that you take in urban forestry or if you go into a different career, I personally think that urban forestry helps us provide that career better. What if you are an interior designer? If you have a knowledge that wood is good in the built environment, you can bring your appreciation and knowledge of urban forestry to that job. If you work in an unrelated job, you may choose an employer based on their beliefs of sustainability or the design of their building or their recycling programs and things like that. So, and recycling is not a new idea. Using wood is not a new idea, but wood has become foreign in the built environment. There are a lot of wood substitutes out there, but guess what? The forest never left. It could, I guess, but the forest never left. And now we've discovered a vast amount of a new wood resource, which are these trees outside our door. So I think that there are probably more and more urban forestry jobs such as Kim's that will become more significant and hopefully more plentiful, and that will feed existing industries using a new resource. That's my thoughts.
Awesome. I love the quote, "The forest never left." And I just want to let folks know that for a long time, when urban trees were cut down, they'd often just be put to a landfill or chopped up for mulch. And so some of these newer ways of thinking about wood that you touched on, Dwayne, are really cool. And thanks for sharing that. Did anyone else want to add anything at all on our panel?
One thing I think I'll mention is just the whole concept, just like you were saying, the whole concept of urban woodworking is literally brand new. You know, the kids in these classes right now will be the first generation where it will have been something that's been happening throughout their lives. When I started this 20 years ago, the common response I got was, I didn't know this was even possible. And until some of the newer technologies for saws came out, you don't take that risk on a nail in a tree. Now you do. So it's worth it. We've got communities with huge trees. Some of those big things that we can't find in a woodlot anymore are in somebody's backyard. So I think it's going to be, again, a very much a growing thing as the awareness that it's even possible grows, and as the equipment to process these trees has improved over these past couple of decades.
Mm-hmm.
I see a question in the chat I'd love to answer. The question is a college degree required to be an urban forester? And then the second part of that is, what would a salary range be in this career area? Well, the answer to the first one is no. Actually, knowledge. For anything we do, knowledge is the most important thing. There's a lot of ways to acquire knowledge, and certainly going on past high school for perhaps a 2-year program of study, a 4-year program of study, or you just get hooked on trees and you keep going on for a master's degree or PhD. There's something there for everyone. But the key thing is always knowledge. And I can think actually about my father. He was a phenomenal farmer, and his high school education was his terminal degree, but he acquired knowledge through life. And so that's probably the most important part. And I remember my mentor, Bob Miller, always saying, there's 3 jobs for every student. That was true back then, that's true today. There are more jobs in this field than we have people. That's probably one of the biggest issues we have in urban community forestry, is lack of actually people. There's such a demand for people. Now, the demand for people can be something, if you love working with trees outside, actually pruning trees, removing trees, there are phenomenal opportunities out there. If you like managing tree populations like John does, there's phenomenal opportunities out there. Give you an idea for pay ranges. This was some work we did, and I can tell you the national median for all occupations, a municipal arborist is at that median level, which is pretty neat. That means half the people make more than you, half the people make less. A city forester on average in the United States makes about 50% more than the national median. And so on average, about $75,000 is what a city forester makes across the country. Now, I don't know what John makes or other city foresters in Wisconsin. There's a variety of pay, but they typically are above the national median for all occupations in the US. So the bottom line is you can actually have fun in this career, but you can also make a living that sustains the lifestyle that you actually want to live at. So again, bottom line is lots of careers. Do you need a high school education? Yeah, usually. Do you need to have a college education? It helps, but knowledge is the most important way, and there's a lot of pathways to get there.
Well
Great,
said.
thanks so much for jumping in on that one. Dwayne, did you want to add something on that?
Well, I just whispered out loud, well said, Rich. Beautiful.
Yeah, I could speak to a little bit about the urban forestry requirements, and I don't want to touch too much on salary because, as Rich already pointed out, it's a pretty good range, but it is a decent pay. My particular position, yes, absolutely requires a 4-year college degree in most cases. You can start out on a tree crew, making decent money with a high school degree, and there are multiple tech schools within Wisconsin that offer associate's degrees in urban forestry, including Madison College, Gateway, and another I can't recall. But those programs are designed to get you up and running. Within 2 years, you could be running your own tree crew and doing quite well. And from there, you could be running a company in no time. But in order to be, in my position, yeah, it took a 4-year degree plus some experience to get here. So that's all I can say about that one.
Great. We have another question in the chat. So I've transitioned us to just a live Q&A. So the question is, for those of you that have employees, what are some skills you look for in the people you hire?
Well, I hire students to do actually academic research with me, work ethic. I can train students to do things, but I can't train them to necessarily have a work ethic. And the work ethic is you should find something that actually you love, that it's not a chore getting up in the morning. And so I think that helps with the work ethic, because we've all probably had things we've done in life that weren't as desirable as others. But yeah, find that little passion you have in life and run with it. But just keep that work acumen, work ethic, that you show up on time and you're willing to learn and you're not afraid to make mistakes, and when you make them, you own up to them and you learn from it. So that's my advice.
I would say the same thing. The passion for what you're doing has been critical, and willingness to work, because not everything is easy. There's always, with any job, there's going to be parts of it that are tough and less fun. John, you mentioned the snow plowing. That's probably not high on the list for a forester, but it's part of the job. So I think everyone has some of that, but a passion for it and a willingness to work, push through.
I have to touch on that snow thing because I was a municipal arborist for a few years, my wife, and I actually did enjoy the snow plow work, but we actually plowed sidewalks, so it was a little different than streets, and it was kind of a fun little gig. So it was a break from actually the din of the day of always doing trees. So.
I was just going to elaborate on, I did follow a traditional path out of high school, and I grew up on a farm, a beef farm, horse farm, and we knew how to work. We built our barns. My father built the home I was raised in, and we always knew how to make things. But he was also an executive to help provide for our family, and I went on and worked for Ford Motor Company, and did not realize how unhappy I was following the mainstream. I was doing kind of what everybody else was doing, getting a degree and going to college. And at thankfully a younger age, I revisited woodworking and built my first piece of furniture. But interestingly, that first piece of furniture I built was out of urban lumber before it was even called that. It was from a tree that had to be removed and was utilized. And that put a spark in me that harkened back to my past, about resources, about the ozone that I learned about in 6th grade, and about recycling. And I've never since followed the well-trodden path. I've done what I've wanted to do. And I recently hired a new marketing company for my lumber business. And they selected some words to describe my company that were not my words. And they referred to my company as mission driven. That made me feel really good. I had never put those words together with that. But I'm not saying that to pat myself on the back as being observed that way. I'm saying how true that is to my happiness, to my goal for success, my goal to make a living. But it's being tied to so much more. It's being tied to urban forestry. It's being tied to architects. And I am just one piece in that, but we all must work together. We all must work together. And in my days, I call them suits to overalls. In the morning, I may have dirt under my nails loading a load of lumber, but in the afternoon, I may be presenting to architects. And kind of like Kim's job, you never know what you're going to get, and you get to do a lot of other things, and that has made my life very enjoyable and challenging at once. So as Kate mentioned, passion seems to be a common thread we've heard today, and I hope you can all find something that you are passionate about, but also something that has a purpose behind it.
That was great. I feel like I'm getting pumped to be an urban forester myself. So thank you all for your inspiring stories. We have another question. What are a few of the most pressing ecological issues that urban foresters must consider?
Well, I'll jump in on that one. It's invasive species is like the number one thing that we deal with in the world, frankly, but in urban forestry, it's a big deal. I actually got into urban forestry right around the same time that emerald ash borer was discovered in Detroit. And I grew up in Detroit, and I went to school at Michigan State, where a lot of research was being done on the emerald ash borer when it was discovered. So I was fortunate enough to get a really deep understanding of how that process works, from discovery to understanding how that insect works, to trying to learn how to control that insect, to realizing that you can't control that insect, and then trying to figure out, well, how do we adapt to the situation? What do we do next? What did we do wrong last time that we can avoid doing next time? So it's a big issue in our world, and we've got a few more invasive species that are going to be doing a lot more damage here in the next few generations as well. So that is the number one issue that we're going to face, I think, going forward.
Great. And I kind of want to just turn that question around on the head, because one of the things that a lot of people were asking them or talking about in why they got into urban forestry was that human forest connection. And so I'd ask, what are some of the most pressing social issues facing urban forests and urban forestry?
Social issues.
Well, I'd like to actually address that from the perspective of how trees actually solve social issues. And, some of the connections of people to nature, sometimes we forget how close nature is to us. And Kim was saying that just wonderfully earlier, early memories from prior to going to Point, that the connections of wildlife in the landscape, and sometimes they can be a problem. But just what we know about urban vegetation and its actually effects on positively of human health, is there's so much information now out there that's scientifically driven that says trees and communities is vital to healthy people, and healthy people are less costly society than unhealthy people. So, tying actually earlier on the ecological question and the pressing thing is we've got a pretty good understanding of some ecological connections in urban forests. We're really building on the human health side. And the bottom line at the end of the day is trees are just not nicety things anymore. They're actually a necessity of urban environments. We know that very well. And the things we talked about, like career prospects, I only see this field actually booming even bigger than it is because of the importance of urban vegetation and society as a whole.
Awesome.
DNR
And we have, I want to make sure we get to this next question too. So sorry to cut you off there,
Not at all.
Dwayne, but we can always return to things. David asks, what recommendations do you have for students to gain work-based learning experiences in urban forestry, considering some of the tasks have safety concerns that require them to be at least 18 years of age? And I would actually break that down into two parts and just say recommendations for students in general, and then maybe ways or programs that you might know about for students that are under 18 that might not be able to operate large equipment and things like that. And we're at about a 10, well, I have to do some project learning tree stuff. So I'm gonna give us a 5-minute-ish warning. And if folks wanna get any more questions in, I would recommend that you throw those into the chat now.
As far as that comment on doing work, one of the things you can do is just look at the classroom opportunities that you have right now. So for example, as a woodworker and interested in it as a kid, I pursued those industrial arts classes that were available and just learned, yes, I like this, I'm not so sure on that. So that's something you can do. And just talking with some of the people that are in this field to get a sense of what their job is like is another thing that maybe you can't get the hands on as much as you'd like, but look, and some of us have opportunities where we can at least do something with a student.
I'd like to echo what Paul just said as far as connecting with people in the industry. In Wisconsin specifically, we have got an incredible forestry community that is very welcoming. All of us are connected to nature, we're connected to our roots, and are way more willing to help people, to talk with people. So even if, like Paul said, you can't get the experience, your love of science and keeping up on your GPA, not being afraid to talk with people. If you see somebody that has a job that you might be interested in, a lot of people love to talk about their careers, kind of how they found their way, and you never know what kind of a link that will lead you. So, be willing to step out of your comfort zone a little bit, maybe make a phone call and talk with people that have an interest in something that you might be interested in.
Well said.
For what I understand, most people I've always heard of from the field, if someone says, "Could I shadow you for part of a day?" They in a heartbeat they'd say, "Certainly." And so take those opportunities if you've got an interest, just to call the Dwaynes of the world, or the Johns, or the Kims, or the Pauls for that matter, and or myself. We'd be happy to talk to you and put you in the right direction.
Great. And I guess I just want to say, if there's any last questions, I'm going to try and summarize things, but you still have a little bit of time to put things in the chat. So here's a last call for questions. But a few of the key things that I took away is that this urban forestry career pathway is a really growing field. There's a lot of different pathways. If you like a lot of variability and not getting bored, sounds like most of these folks get to do something new every day, which is great. And urban forestry is really about some of those cultural and ecological connections and memories that bring us from childhood to present. And thinking about all of the benefits that urban forests give us, both in terms of ecology and human health, is really important. And I guess we don't have any last questions, so I'm just going to say, I'll give everyone on the panel to give any last closing thoughts, and then after I do that, I'll go over some of the PLT curriculum option stuff. But before I give you your last thoughts, I just want to say thank you so much. There were so many great stories and career pathways, and we really appreciate you taking the time to be part of this panel. And we have around 500 students that will be watching it, and probably more than that. So you've made your voices heard in the world of urban forestry, and how young people can think about that as a potential career pathway. So many thanks for that. And with that, I'll give you any last words of wisdom that you want to impart.
I'd like to share something. And my advice is go outside. You have a hard test coming up. You're struggling with something. You just want to connect with people, with the environment. Go outside, spend 20 minutes out there. Research has shown that that's going to make you healthier and better connected. So if you're struggling with anything, or if you just want to better connect, go outside with a friend and think about trees and forestry, and you'll be in a good place.
This whole career, and I had the pleasure of going to school with Kim, so it's kind of gratifying to later on in life be on a panel with her together. But just to this whole career path I've been involved with, and the changes I've seen of our understanding of trees, but also just the inclusiveness of people, of the different races and genders that are involved in this field. I get the privilege to work with people throughout the world, and of just the different opportunities to interact with people. There's a place for anyone. That if you truly enjoy working with things in nature, there's some little aspect that you're going to fit into this career path very, very well.
I was writing down all of the jobs that are related to my everyday business, those that I feed. And I keep on landing on those who have influence over materials options. Traditional forests, harvesting is a big part of keeping them thriving. And to keep those forests thriving, we need to use those products. We need to use those logs. And because there's replanting, and I'm a part of a full circle, my industry is. And as Rich started to say, or was saying earlier, there's a lot of health benefits associated with trees. And as Kim said, to go outside and experience that health, or bathe in the forest, as they say. But there's another term coming out here. The reason I'm leaning towards the wood product side of things, or the designing side of things, is a word we've heard more and more recently in recent years, is biophilic design. We are all wired to be attracted to a forest or to a waterfall or something of nature. And when we bring natural elements inside, such as wood, it makes for a productive, healthier, and happier place to work. And that is a science that involves a science of design, and it also involves a thriving and healthy urban or traditional forest to be able to experience that health going forward. And wood is not a trend. It's not a style right now. It needs to be a part of our lives. And it all begins with healthy trees. So that industry can take you in many, many different directions.
One little thought I have is just, you know, we're living in a time where with COVID and such, where we're talking about things traveling across the planets, whether it's insects causing emerald ash borer or whatever, and also dealing with social impacts and all that's going on. In essence, what we have in urban trees is that personal connection, that local aspect that is so important to people nowadays, and the fact that we can be doing this all in our community, interacting between private sector, public sector, interacting between cultures, and producing things from wood that we love. It's an amazing opportunity that we have in this field.
I'd like to conclude my thoughts on this by saying that any of you students who are watching, if you want a good job, if you want to do well, the best thing you can do is take the initiative and go for it. The best job I ever got was a forestry job where I simply called a consultant who did timber harvesting, and I said, hey, I want a job. What's it going to take? And he gave me a job, and it got me into this career path. And every time I've gotten a new job, I've gone further than I probably felt I should have. I kept applying for jobs that I didn't think I was ready for, or wasn't really qualified for. But it turns out that I was, and I just didn't know it yet. So that's my message: is if you want it, go for it. So that's it.
All right, and with that, John's just going to drop the mic there.
That's right.
I just want to show both students and teachers this quick little, there's a quiz that you can take as a student that asks you a few questions, and then it connects you with green jobs that might be in your field. And I think it's really relevant for this panel because, as we saw, there's a lot of different pathways, whether you want to work in architecture and design, or with actual wood, or working with people. There's all sorts of different ways to take this field. And this is just a tool to help you do that. So I'm just gonna share my screen again, hopefully. And I'm gonna do this really quick, but again, if you're an educator out there and you registered for this career panel, you'll get links to the curriculum as well as the student codes that that help you explore these forest careers. And so this is just some results from the quiz that I took. So I'm sort of a weird person. I'm artistic and realistic. It was tied between those two. But it just gives you a little bit of description about some of your strengths after you answer these personality type quiz things. And then it gives you different career options that might be good options for you. So I could think, oh, I started studying landscape architecture and maybe I should have followed through on that, or maybe I want to be a photographer or an arborist or a logger. And I would say actually in my current profession, I get to kind of balance these two worlds. And on the left-hand side of the screen, you can see that those are just different strengths and weaknesses and things that you gravitate to. So as a student, you can take this quiz and then get a few suggestions that you might not be thinking about within the forestry world. So you'll be getting that to your classroom soon. And for teachers or educators, this is kind of the roadmap for what the curriculum looks like. I'm not going to dive into it too much, but you'll also get access to the curriculum. And I'll point out that the learning activities are kind of the flow of how things work. And so with that, let me stop that share. And I'll see if there's any last minute chats. A lot of thank yous coming in for all our panelists. And I just want to say thank you again. And we'll post this onto our YouTube channel for those that weren't able to attend for the live session. And if you have questions, feel free. It sounds like all the folks on our panel really like being mentors as well, and that reaching out to folks is a thing that is something that they think is important. So if you have more questions, feel free to look them up and hound them about things that you think are interesting. So with that, I think I'll stop the meeting, but thanks so much for everyone that attended. And again, special thanks to all our panelists.